The importance of farting around. I knew that was going to be the title of this before I started. Often I record these and then something particularly memorable comes up and I use that as the title. But I had been farting around writing, and I thought, I'm going to talk about this some more. I think I had an episode last week where I talked about discipline in the creative process. So something I think about a lot, and I'm particularly thinking about it now because I am trying to engage with a piece of music. Unlike with a lot of the pieces I write, I've been thinking about this piece for many years, but through laziness and lack of confidence and lack of external impetus and all of those things, I haven't written it. Although I have taken notes, but it's at a point where I'm either going to write it or not. These are the songs I've talked about, the set of songs for Catherine and Paul to sing. I've talked about how the text was derived originally from a bunch of random email spam. If you haven't heard that episode, check for my Mesostics episode, and you'll find out a lot about how I arrived at the text. But in short, for about 3 minutes, one February afternoon, a while ago now, 5 or 6 years ago, I received hundreds of emails. And they all had very evocative subject headers, and they had very equally evocative and very unusual text in the body of the email. And when I Googled it, I found out that the text was a mixture of quotes from War and Peace and what appeared to be a Victorian manual for factory operations, making widgets. So over the course of a while, I kind of figured out how to extract some useful text from that. Anyway, so I've got these songs using that text, and they're quite wonderful lyrics. I mean, it was a real gift to get them. And I'm looking forward to writing these songs, and I really, now is the time to do it. And I'd written out 30 of the lyrical fragments that I ended up with. And this morning, as I was looking at them, and I've got some music notes as well, and I was starting to think which music themes go with which songs and how should it all come together. And I realized that what I needed to do was take the paper that the song lyrics were written on, cut them up, and reorganize them into fewer, longer songs. So instead of 30 very short songs, I now have 8 longer songs of different lengths. Some have 3 stanzas, some have 4, and some have 5. This wasn't a random process. I didn't just shake them up and throw them out. But it was definitely an intuitive process where I knew the first stanza for each of the first 8. I knew the first stanza for each of the 8 songs. I knew I needed to get rid of some stanzas because I had 31 and I needed 28. Right? So I literally cut the paper up and laid them out. And my goal was to then methodically simply go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9 would be the second stanza of the first song, and 10 would be the second stanza of the second song, on and on. But of course, I'm an idiot, and my work area is chaos. And what happened then when I was done, I was like, oh shit, the first one's only got 3 stanzas, and the fifth one has 5 stanzas, and then songs 2, 3, and 4 have 3 stanzas, and songs 6, 7, and 8 have 4 stanzas. And I thought, well, that's pretty good, right? And I hadn't set out to do that, But I had set out to reorganize things, and it was like this directive came, and the process of farting around is allowing those directives to be taken seriously. But it's weird to say, oh, there's a directive. There's something like the idea of the daemon, what the ancient Greeks talked about, the voice. Socrates talked about the daemon presenting inspirational ideas. It's weird to talk about that kind of stuff. It's uncomfortable to think about it. But nevertheless, it is a real phenomenon. And for me, the messiness of my work area is actually what allows that voice to come through. For a long time, I've wished that wasn't the case, that I could work in this sort of Zen-like, pristine environment. But that's not the case. And I was looking at a picture of Francis Bacon, painter, his studio, absolute chaos. Everywhere, oil. Painterly studios are by nature messier than music studios because you've got paint everywhere, and cans of chemicals, and all canvas lying everywhere, and things like that. But I thought the idea that there's this direction that comes, and you need to be able to hear it. I need to be able to hear it. And this wasn't like a voice commanding that I go and do some enormous dramatic work. All it was cut these up and reorder them a bit. You'll be happy if you do. I have a friend, my friend Lowry, who has done enormous work over his career. And he talks about this direction. And his voice is very visionary and indifferent to his capability his initial reaction to the demand of the art. The voice is indifferent and just expects him to get on with it. My voice is not so severe because I still consider myself a fairly trivial composer, and so my voice reacts to that, right, and says, "Well, here's a fairly trivial demand. Go ahead and do this, and then we'll see what happens after that." So the farting around in a messy environment ultimately allows for this voice to come to me. Now, I totally get that for other people, the pristine environment, the clean environment, the focused environment is necessary and beautiful and unique. It's like simmering, right? Like cooking. I've just started using an Instapot, a pressure cooker, and letting that thing go to see what happens when you put something in it, really. What happens when constant pressure of a particular type is applied over time to some object. That object will change. If that object is a thought, what happens to that thought? The serendipity, the serendipity of connections is very important to the way that I write as well. I'm guessing to the way that everybody writes, that the idea that the work is planned out in advance in all details, or even in major details, it's not borne out by my experience. I may have a general idea, but so, for example, I started off by thinking I was going to have 31 4-line songs in this song cycle, and instead I've got 8 songs that are 12, 16, or 20 lines. That's a pretty big difference in terms of structure. There is a structure there, but it's not one that I'm immediately thinking about. I can look at it and I can separate myself and say there's a structure there. So at the end of it, it just reminds me that the necessity of farting around, and then the necessity of creating a life that has the space in time and resources where that farting around can happen.